Well, Iraq is back in the news in a big way. And there's a lot of discussion about strategy, indecision, sacrifice in the past, and what it was it good for if we're just going to bug out of our responsibilities in the Middle East. And it's a complicated issue, and you really can't fully understand it unless you understand the whole Islamic thing that's going on in the Middle East right now. Unfortunately, due to that video that supposedly created or caused the attack on our consulate in Benghazi, YouTube was barred by the Ninth District Court of Appeals in San Francisco from showing that video. And so rather than risk saying something that might be perceived as disrespectful to one of the world's great religions, I would rather that you investigate that for yourself. And I highly recommend a book. It's entitled Islamic Imperialism, A History by Ephraim Karsh. It's written in 2006. It was published in 2006. And it essentially starts in the year 632 AD at the time of the Prophet Muhammad's death. And it talks about the division that was caused by his death and the confusion over his succession in the leadership of the Islam religion or form of government, form of laws, however you want to look at it. Unlike Christianity and Judaism, Islam kind of encompasses government, laws, customs, and religion all in one. And so that you have to have a good understanding of that. This book, Islamic Imperialism History, you can be found on Amazon, and you can have a used copy for as little as a penny. So I highly recommend that you get a hold of that and learn about it if you don't already know about it. I'd like to continue on with a discussion a little bit of the various sides that are being taken by, not only by the administration but by the members of the previous administration that waged the campaign in Iraq for roughly 10 years. Predictably, the debate has fallen down on party lines. Here is the president and his war council. His policy or lack thereof has been described by some as feckless, without strategy, without purpose. Whatever the case, it's not very complimentary, and I tend to go along with that. On the other hand, we have the other side that's kind of represented now by Vice President Cheney and his daughter Liz, who have appeared on a number of programs, and they tend to be very defensive about our previous policy, which was also misguided. And of course, there are other geniuses for war that have cropped up. Kelly Ayotte, senator from New Hampshire, evidently is priming herself, getting her qualifications to run for president in another couple of cycles. And then the usual suspects, Lindsey Graham and John McCain. I'd like to look at the map of Iraq and what we're dealing with. As you can see, there's Sunnis and Shia and a mixture of the two. And these are essentially the areas that are under contention. The dark brown area, the north, is Kurds, and I would say most likely it's going to remain that way. There may be a greater Kurdistan that's formed with the Kurds in Turkey as well as in northern Iraq. I don't look forward to them bonding with the Baghdad government. The others is Sunnis to the west in the Anbar province that we were friendly with, and then the Shias down to the south. That's generally how it's broken down, and I think the fighting is going to get much tougher as it gets closer to Baghdad. At least I hope it does. Let's go back to the Corbett test and look at this situation, and it really hasn't changed. And as I predicted in the previous discussion on Iraq and then Vietnam and Afghanistan, is that this situation does not fit the criteria for any type of limited war. Well, we don't know what our objective is, for one, and that's to the president's, he's to blame for that. We don't have a clear objective in our future there. Certainly there's antagonistic behavior, but there is no popular repugnance because the American people don't know who the enemy is. The major thing, though, is that we lack strategic isolation. Until we take on Syria and Iran, we lack strategic isolation. My good friends Clausewitz and Machiavelli and probably Julian Corbett, if you pinned him down, would agree that there are two types of war. One is a war of necessity, the other is a war of choice. Essentially what we have been engaged in Iraq has been a war of choice on our part, but in the case of Iraq, this week, with the attacking group from Syria, ISIS, this is a war of necessity, a classic war of necessity in which the survival of that country is depending on the Iraqi army standing up and fighting to the death, if necessary, to defend the country. That's what they're there for. I think if we sent our forces in at any point, in any number, the Iraqi army will be more than happy to step back and let the Americans do their dirty work. My feeling is that this is a no-win situation for the United States, and that what we should do at this point is back out completely. We've already backed our forces out, and we should allow them to go at it. I know that sounds horrible, but we should allow them to go at it and then see where it is at the end, and then perhaps come up with a strategy to deal with whatever remains of Iraq. I suspect what will happen is that there will be a greater Kurdistan formed, and I think it's a group that we can easily work with. I think it's in our interest, national interest, to see to it that Jordan remains Jordan. As far as Iraq goes, I think that the separation into a Sunni state and a Shia state is probably in the best interest and survival of these people. The idea of reforming a coalition among the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shias is probably not workable. I just using a little example. We're highly critical of the Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki, and the fact that he didn't bring Sunnis into his circle. Well, it's not that hard to understand when you realize that Maliki's constituency is principally Shias, and they're roughly 80% of the population, and he has to pay attention to that constituency. Much the same way that our president claims that, or acts in a way that shows that environmentalists are a major constituency, to the point where he has not taken what many consider to be a smart action in approving the Keystone Pipeline. That's just an example of how political leaders with constituencies often put the interests of that constituency ahead of what might be a more beneficial solution in the long run. Anyway, again, I know it sounds coarse and everything, but I think the idea of letting them fight it out is probably the best solution at this point.